right, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon and welcome in, everyone. My name is Daniela Labate-Cavelli. I'm the Director of Psychiatric Rehabilitation Initiatives here at NIAPRS. Welcome to today's virtual statewide kickoff, where we will be presenting material from our regional meetings that we held in the last 2 weeks around the state, and those served as a sort of orientation to the New York Psychiatric Rehabilitation Training Academy. So since we're in the webinar format today, I would like to encourage folks to use the chat box and the Q&A throughout the webinar so that you can communicate with us. Oops, I've already gone too far. We will be posting, you heard we've already recording today's conversation, and we're also going to be posting the PowerPoint as well as the recording and on our website, which is www.psychrehabacademy.org. So we're going to also be doing some polls and some exercises, including a fun little word cloud today. So I would also ask that you keep your cell phone nearby. Don't check it, because we want you paying attention to us. But keep your cell phone nearby, because we're going to be doing a fun little word cloud that will require you to be texting your answers into us. But before we get into today's material, I'm going to turn it over to Katie Merrill from the New York State Office of Mental Health and Len Statham from NIAPRS, who are going to start us off with some welcome and introductions.
Thanks, Daniela. My name is Katie Merrill. I'm the Director of the Rehab Services Unit here at OMH Central Office, and I'm very excited to welcome you all today to our virtual kickoff for the New York Psychiatric Rehabilitation Training Academy. I think I got that acronym right. We use a lot of acronyms. I'm so excited to be here, though, because this is a project that we've worked on with NIAPRS for about a year now. OMH funded this using enhanced FMAP funding made available through the American Rescue Plan Act. And we really see this as a huge investment in our workforce. We're very excited to offer this training and to work on this initiative over the next 3 years. Psychiatric rehabilitation is something that we have done for decades in New York State, and yet the training for it has really been here and there. We haven't done an organized evidence-based rehab training in a few decades. In fact, I think it was the early 1990s, the last time that OMH funded something like this. So it's very exciting. We're also really happy that NIAPRS has partnered with the Psych Rehab Association, which is the national accrediting board, I believe, for the CPRP credential, which Daniela is going to talk about later today. So we just want to thank you all for being here, for investing your time, for supporting your staff and attending as well. We hope that you come away learning what this training academy is all about, what the time commitment is, what the training will look like, and what you're going to get out of it, which we hope is a really thorough training and solid skills in psych rehab. So thank you all for being here. I do want to acknowledge I have Steve Roman here with me, also a panelist, and I believe Shokri and Bowie is in the audience if he's not a panelist. I can't see everyone's pictures right now, but they are from my team, and they've also been working closely with NIAPRS on this initiative, so we're very happy to be here and welcome you today.
Thank you, Katie. My name is Len Statham. I'm Chief Operating Officer here at NIAPRS. And I am very excited to not only be on this webinar, but to be working on this project. It is something that we've thought about, dreamed about, and now it's come to fruition. And we have spent a good part of a year really thinking through how to make this the best training academy for you. And with the end result being people are going to get better services, you're going to get the tools you need, and we are going to sort of reinvigorate you all with psych rehab techniques and tools. I want to, before I get into our training partners, which you see on the screen here are many, including Boston University. I mean, if you're going to do a training academy, you should have the originals and the creators of psych rehab. So we've got Boston University front and center as part of our partners. But I want to share just a brief story of how I got introduced to psych rehab, in that I was working at an IPRT, just joined. I was probably 3 or 4 months in, and I began to get trained in psych rehab from my supervisor at the time. And things were going okay. I noticed that everybody around me was getting much better results with people than I was. People were getting work, people were going back to school, people were, living the lives that they wanted to lead. And my people were really kind of struggling along. And at that point, I really kind of thought, well, maybe this isn't for me. I'm just not getting it. And then it finally clicked. And I remember the first person that I actually worked with that it clicked with, and that was a person who was wanting as his goal to work, and really kind of that set me on the path towards working in the employment field for quite some time. But yeah, he wanted to work, and we began to look for work for him and to start the psych rehab process with him. And I'm not going to go into the details other than to say, we ended up getting him a job, and he lasted about a couple months. We got another job, and then we got another job, and it just wasn't working. And every time that he'd come in to his appointments, he'd always mention his gardens, which kind of got a little irritating after a while, frankly. But I would listen to him, even in the wintertime when he'd bring in his maps and set them down on my desk and go over, where we're going to put the daffodils this year. I'd listen to him. Although in hindsight, I'm not sure if I really listened to him, because at some point I just said, oh God, let's just go and see this guy's garden. So I did. And I went to his apartment, which was in a large house, which had 6 apartments in them. And I was amazed when I showed up there. I could not believe the level of work this guy was doing. It was professional landscaping. And then it dawned on me, he's been trying to tell me that he wants to do landscaping. I had him in food jobs, I had him in all kinds of jobs, but it just never dawned on me to think, oh, why don't we try this? And we did a lot of psych rehab at that point, in terms of like, what are the resources that this person has? What are the skills that he has? And then we began to find out and explore what the outer environment was for him. What do landscapers do? And we determined right out of the gate that landscapers, when you first start in on that job, you, with no experience, you're going to do the grunt work. You're going to do the shoveling. You're going to go hauling dirt. And really, his forte was in the design. Not that he didn't want to, or couldn't do the other work, but his real skill was just making things beautiful. And so we began to talk, and the more that we began to do sort of the assessing the outer environment and matching it with his skills, it was clear that he was going to start his own business. And that is exactly what he did. Because when you're starting your own business, you can do everything from the grunt work to the design work. And he did that. And that was 20 plus years ago. He's still in business today. He still is doing well. I keep up with certain people. He's one of them. And he has a family now. And I've mentioned on the other kickoffs, this guy, he still has a mental illness. He just is not defining himself that way. He's not a lifelong person in our system. He measures himself by his job, by his family, by all the things that all of us on this call, how we define ourselves. He's defining himself in the same way. So he's not just a client anymore. And I think psych rehab has the power to unleash that in everybody that comes before us. And with these tools and with our partners, I think, and with your effort, I think we're going to make a major difference in New York State. So I'd like to introduce our partners. Academy of Peer Services. A lot of you probably know who these folks are, but it's good to mention them. McSilver Institute. They are going to be, they're doing a lot of our backroom stuff, but they've also lent us Dr. Salerno. The Coalition for Behavioral Health. Some of you, if you're not from downstate, you might not have heard of them, but they are a top-notch organization, and they will be working with a lot of organizations down in New York City and Long Island. Many of you, if not all of you, know CPI, and Dr. Paul Margulies will be working very closely with us. Friends of Recovery and Partnership to End Addiction and ASAP, all are substance use training agencies, and they'll be working with us to help us with the organizations that want to do psych rehab with folks that are experiencing substance use challenges. And then we also have CCSI, who are really going to be helping us with the DEI, making sure that everything is really rooted in that. And then also there are our data folks. So I think I've mentioned everyone. And so I just want to thank you all for being here, and I'll turn it over to Daniela now.
All right, thanks, Len. So we want to know who's in the room with us here. So we're going to launch our first poll. We actually have 2 questions on this slide. So the first poll is, we want to know who's in the room. So please select all that apply. What services do you personally provide? PROS, CORE, HCBS, CORE and HCBS, PROS and CORE, or all of the above. And if you don't provide a direct service, that's cool too. Let us know who you are in the chat room. And then you can also go ahead to our second question, which is, what is your role within your agency? So is it that you provide direct services, or is it that you provide direct services and also supervise? Perhaps you're just a supervisor. Perhaps your role is as a supervisor, or maybe you supervise more than one program, or a division or a department, or if you're an executive. So we'll give you a few minutes to get those chat or poll questions in, and then we'll share the results. If we were in person, we'd go around the room and we'd see who was in the room with us, right, Len?
I want to say, while you're all doing that, we had hundreds of people come out to the in-person events, so we are safe. And so when we do get into the trainings, we'd love to see you in person.
Yeah, it was nice to reconnect with people after so many years. Yeah. All right, so I think we can go ahead and close the poll, and let's see if we can share the results. So it looks like most folks in the room are either PROS or CORE providers. And most of you provide direct services with supervisors who also provide services as a close runner-up. All right, thank you. Okay, so as Len mentioned, we do have quite a group of partners that support our work in this academy. We also have a group of advisors who we've been working really hard with behind the scenes to build the curriculum for this training academy. And I do want to sort of recognize them publicly. Many of them are listening in the background today. So they all have one main thing in common, and that's that they've all been trained in psychiatric rehabilitation by Boston University. And they've put their own expertise in psych rehab together to collaborate with us to develop this training. So Dr. Marianne Farkas is the director of the Boston University Center for Psychiatric Rehabilitation. And she, along with Dr. Bill Anthony, developed psych rehab. So she's actually also the current president-elect of the World Psychiatric Rehabilitation Association. And fun fact, she is the first president-elect who is not a psychiatrist, and only the second woman to ever be elected president, which I think is pretty cool. So then we also have David Bucciferro. Many of you may know him. He is been providing training in psych rehab throughout his career, both in local government or state government. And then he worked at the New York State Office of Mental Health. And then after in his roles in other ways through technology companies. Dr. Paul Margulies, I think as Len mentioned earlier, he's on loan from us through CPI, the Center for Practice Innovations. And he's been training providers through the lens of rehab and recovery and psych rehab for many, many years. You may know him from his work with IPS and wellness self-management. And speaking of wellness self-management, if you know Paul, you probably know Dr. Tony Salerno as well, who co-authored Wellness Self-Management with Paul. Tony is currently employed at the McSilver Institute, and we're grateful that he is on loan to us as well. In addition, we have Dr. Edie Schwartz, who's currently a consultant and previously the director of training at NIAPRS and also the CEO of an agency in Putnam County, where she infused psych rehab principles and practices throughout that agency. And she, along with Mike Stoltz, who is the recently retired CEO of an agency out on Long Island, are both subject matter experts in how to integrate psych rehab at the administration and agency levels. So we're really excited that they've been working with us. I meet with them very often. You'll get to know them throughout the training, through webinars, and of course, through some of their work as regional trainers. So as you can see from the right-hand side of your screen, we have a list of regional trainers. So each of our New York State regions will be working with at least one trainer throughout this project, and these folks will be facilitating your in-person trainings. So we have Tony, who will be doing double duty here as an advisor and a trainer, along with Dr. Amy Spagnolo in New York City. Paula Fries will be supporting training in Long Island. Paul will be doing double duty as an advisor and also a trainer for the Hudson River region. And David will be training in Central and Western New York. So I wanted to put this slide up front because I think it's a really important one. NIAPRS has been on a journey now for about a year, I would say, maybe probably more, to become an anti-racist organization. And we've been working really closely with Lenora Reed-Rose and the team at CCSI on this endeavor. And we felt it was a really natural fit for them to sort of work with us and partner with us on this project. So the Training Academy, so that we can ensure that we weave social justice, equity, and inclusion throughout all of our training curriculum. And as a peer-run agency, NIAPRS is also committed to ensuring that our training aligns with peer values. And then finally, we think it's really important for our providers who work with people and support people with substance use challenges to learn psych rehab techniques and practices too. And we want to make sure that our language aligns with this provider community as well. So to that end, we have several partners here on the screen that will be reviewing all of our material and supporting our work. And I wanted to thank them for their roles as well. All right, so one sort of last slide before we move into the actual material to orient you to the Training Academy. I want to frame the conversation that we're having today in this way. And we have, we've done a lot of outreach. We did a lot of sort of work around the state getting ready for this Training Academy. And we asked a lot of providers for input because we thought that was important, right? We know that there is a sort of workforce crisis out there. We know many folks in many teams are doing double and triple duty. So when we put this training curriculum together, we wanted to keep that in mind, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to reach agencies and participants with different levels or different capacities. So some agencies told us that there is like no way that we can do anything out of the building because they are so short-staffed. Others welcomed the opportunity. And so we wanted to think about, we want you to think about your capacity to participate as you hear the details of the training today. And you certainly do not need to decide today. And we would actually encourage you to make this decision with agency leadership. We think that we've put a training curriculum together that has sort of the minimum or lowest commitment, but with a high yield return. And we would like for you to think about your capacity to obtaining knowledge. Is your capacity at the level of obtaining knowledge, right? Is it participating in our virtual offerings? Perhaps it's, working towards skill acquisition, right? Maybe it's learning or honing new skills, and that'll be both through our learning modules and some in-person trainings, as well as that knowledge level or knowledge phase. Or maybe it's learning new skills. Well, we already sort of talked about the new skills, but maybe it's kind of taking the next step after you learn or hone those new skills into skill development, right? So where will you participate? Will you participate in all of our virtual and in-person trainings and then move into our virtual communities of practice? Or even more, are you going to get to that place where we can work with your agency on full integration of psychiatric rehabilitation, either at the program or agency level? So again, you do not need to decide today, but we do want you to start thinking about your own capacity as we move through the material that we present today. So we want to hear from you again. What are you thinking? Is it attending the virtual options? Is it taking the learning modules and attending the in-person trainings, or the communities of practice as well, or working towards full integration? And if you're not sure, we have an option for that too. And that's quite all right. So we'll give you another minute or so. And I see a very active chat box, which makes me happy. Len is working in the background to take your questions, and we've got plenty of time at the end to answer all your questions. All right, we'll give you another 30 seconds to answer the poll, and then we'll go ahead and share the results. Okay, let's see where we've landed. It looks like most people are at that sort of place where they're going to attend the virtual as well as the in-person trainings and the learning modules. Some folks are not quite sure about communities of practice. We have about 20 folks on the line that say they want to get to that full integration, which is awesome. And then a handful of folks that aren't really sure, and they're going to take it back. And you know what? We can help support some decision making and help you work with you to kind of talk through some of that stuff. Okay, thank you for taking part in our poll. All right, so at this point, I'm going to start my official overview of the Academy and our training offerings. And this is going to include both the practitioner and the supervisor training, as well as another discussion about implementation and integration of psych rehab. I also want to say that we know that you are all trained clinicians and professionals, and that many of you have already had some trainings in things like, RAP or CBT, DBT, person-centered planning, cognitive remediation, IPS, other, evidence-based practices and the like. And we want you to look at this training through the lens of psych rehab, which is to say that you are going to be incorporating what you already know and maybe shift into a mindset a little bit where you can incorporate the principles and practices of psych rehab. So another way of saying that is, thinking about how you're going to slightly shift in some ways, maybe try something new so that we can better support people's personal experiences, which will lead to improved outcomes. And that's why personal experience and outcomes is listed as that sort of first item or line on the graphic here. Everything that we do at NIAPers, we believe that we need to put the person first, right? And I know many of you, if not all of you, would agree with me. So how does what we're doing in our daily practice support and improve someone's experience of the services that they take part in? So think about that a little bit also when we sort of walk you through the training academy. Okay, so here's sort of the Cliff's Notes slide about our overall training. So as you've already heard, this is a 3-year funded project by the New York State Office of Mental Health. We're going to have 2 cohorts of practitioner training and 1 cohort of supervisor training. Now that first cohort of practitioners is starting now, right? You're in our first cohort, and then we'll run a second cohort of practitioners beginning next year, February of 2024. Training will be hybrid, as we mentioned earlier, so there'll be some virtual and some in-person learning. It's actually going to be mostly virtual. We are going to ask you to participate in 3 half-day in-person trainings and 1 full-day in-person training in your region as part of the cohort of practitioner training. And then we'll move into communities of practice, where you'll sort of take what you've learned to the next level. And we'll have a community of practice for practitioners, 1 for supervisors that go through the supervision training, which you'll hear much more about later, as well as 1 for agency leadership for those agencies that really want to talk about how do we infuse psych rehab into our agencies, into our policies and practices, talking about everything from, hiring to retaining staff and training, and really sort of implementing psych rehab throughout the agency at the agency level, making sure that our mission, vision, and values really align with psych rehab. We're also really excited about CPRP scholarships. We've been working really closely with the Psychiatric Rehabilitation Association, or PRA, and Katie mentioned them earlier, but we've been working really hard with PRA to make sure that this training will qualify you for the CPRP exam. So we're going to get into those details a little bit later on as well, but we are able to offer you scholarship to pay for the CPRP exam. We're also able to offer you continuing education credits. We believe that you should be getting continuing education credits as you work through this material. And if we can offer them to you, we're really excited to do that. As of today, we have CEs approved for LMSW, LCSW, CPRP, LMHC, New York State Certified Peer Specialists. We are working on getting certification approved, or CEs approved rather, for SERPAs and other peer support specialists or recovery specialists, LTACs, and MFTs. And I think, and KSACs. I think I mentioned KSACs. If I didn't, I meant to. So we're working on really trying to get continuing ed credits for every profession that we possibly can offer you, if they're not already approved. And then the last piece of the training, which is another really important piece of the training, is consultation and implementation support. So you're going to be introduced sort of later on in today's presentation. You're going to be introduced to our implementation specialists that are going to be working by region to help support you. We know that asking you to be involved in training for 18 months or up to 3 years is the big ask. And there may be some challenges and some barriers, and we're here to help support you throughout that process. So you'll be able to think of your implementation support team or your consultation team as sort of your guidance counselor throughout this process, to help support you to make it through and to sort of keep engaged. So they'll be doing just training engagement, as well as be able to connect you with subject matter experts. But we'll get into their role a little bit later as well. I actually think it's really important for you to see sort of the numbers, right? So I put this slide together so you can see statewide enrollment. And I shared this slide with actually each of our regions when we went around the state the last couple of weeks presenting this live and in person. And the numbers keep changing, which is really incredible, and we're really excited about that. So as of yesterday, we had 515 people raise their hand and say, I'm a practitioner, I want to be enrolled in your training. In addition, we had 174 people say we are supervisors and we're signing up for the practitioner training, and we want to move on after that and become super skilled in psych rehab supervision. In addition to that, we had 70 people from OMH. So that's our central office staff, some field office staff, and state psych center staff sign up for this training as well, which to me says that OMH has made an incredible commitment to support the staff around the state that provide rehabilitation and recovery services. So really exciting that they're going to be taking part as well. And those numbers are representative of 110 unique agencies throughout the state. So if I counted the programs, we'd have many more than that, because we've had many agencies say we're signing up, you know, our core providers, our HCBS providers, our CCBHC providers. But the number around the state is 110 unique agencies. So I think our first cohort is off to a running start. Okay, so now that you've heard a little bit about who's around the state participating, I would like to know who from the state is on our call today. So in which region do you provide services? So remember I said have your phone nearby. This is the time. So we want to know, in which region do you provide services? Is it New York State, New York City, Long Island, Hudson River, Central, or Western? You could do this two ways. We use an app called Poll Everywhere. You can either go to pollev.com on your computer, or you can join by text and text Daniela, LABA 934 to the number on your screen, 22333, and respond to the activity. So let's see if I can switch around here and open up Poll Everywhere. And we should be able to start seeing people's responses. And again, if you need that information, it's up at the screen, pollev.com. Oh, here we go. We've got our first answer, Western, Hudson. Keep them coming, folks. Let's build a word cloud. Western's getting bigger. That means that we have more people answering Western. Southern tier, looks like Hudson River's coming in. And maybe getting a little bit bigger. Okay, Western's getting bigger and Hudson's not far behind, but we've got some Long Island. We'll give this another minute or so and see where most of you are from. All right, it looks like Western and Hudson River regions are the big winners. So thank you everywhere. Thank you everyone for answering. And let's go back to our slides. Okay. So let's get into a little bit of information about our practitioner training. We're going to get into the weeds a little bit and give you as much information as we possibly can. So there are sort of three phases of the practitioner training that we're going to be offering. The first is our knowledge dissemination phase, right? So that's where we kind of give you information. Those are larger training events, and those are all virtual. We'll be using Zoom webinars and Zoom meetings for that phase, as well as some podcasts. So for the first 4 months of our training, for February, March, April, and May, you'll be participating in a monthly webinar on a specific topic related to psych rehab implementation and practice. Now, each of those webinars will then have a podcast that's related. So for example, February's webinar is around sort of the psych rehab 101, if you will, right? So how do we support people using psych rehab? So our presenter will actually be Dr. Marianne Farkas to kick us off, and she'll be presenting some information to you about psych rehab and recovery. And then following that, you'll have the opportunity to listen to a podcast where we take the information that you've listened to in the webinar and turn it into more of an experience for you. So that podcast, you'll hear from providers about how they've used psych rehab techniques to support people. You'll hear from a provider that is going to talk to you about their work with someone who didn't have a goal and how they supported that person to develop a goal. And I say didn't have a goal in air quotes. You'll also hear from a provider about how they worked with someone to support them changing their life role, moving from the life role of a tenant to someone who's living independently. And then you'll have an office hour where you can, actually get on a Zoom meeting with Dr. Farkas and ask questions about what you've heard in the podcasts and the webinars. So we'll do that for 4 months, each month having a different topic. Following that, we'll move into the second phase, which is skill acquisition. So that'll be another 9 months. You'll have 5 learning modules that you'll listen to, or rather take part in, using the APS and CPI LMS systems, learning management systems. And we thought that was a natural fit because all of you already have logins for those. So you'll be learning different things in each of those learning modules. Following each learning module will be an in-person training. So remember back a couple slides ago, we talked about the time commitment for 3 half-day trainings and 1 full-day training. At the skill acquisition phase of our academy is where you'll be doing that in-person training. So for example, don't quote me on this, but I believe in June, you have your first learning module. It's either May or June. And then in July or the following month, you'll have your first in-person training. Now, I know the chat box is going to go bananas right now. And everybody's going to say, does that mean we have to give up our whole staff every month that you have an in-person training? The answer is no. We realize that people cannot afford to send their entire staff. And in some cases, you've enrolled your entire staff in this training, which is incredible. So we know that, and we are going to have each training multiple times in each region so that you can stagger staff. And depending on the number of staff enrolled in each region in our academy is how we'll figure out how many we'll have. But please rest assured that you will not have to shut your doors for the days of in-person training. And then following that skill acquisition phase is our skill development phase. And this is where we go into those regional communities of practice. And those will also be virtual and they'll be via Zoom. So the total time commitment here is 45 hours, which is not a coincidence that 45 hours is the minimum time requirement of training to sit for the CPRP. Of those 45 hours, 18 hours are in person, and that will take place over 18 months if you as a practitioner participate in all phases of training. So I'm not a math whiz, but I know it turns out to be about 3 hours a month of a time commitment. So just to go back to what I had said earlier in the conversation with you today, we're looking for sort of the lowest threshold of participation with the highest yield results. We know that you're all busy. We know that you all have full-time jobs. In some cases, you're doing more than one person's job, and we're mindful of that. But we think we can get you to a place where you can pass the CPRP exam and be a skilled psychiatric rehabilitation practitioner in 18 months, over 45 hours, which is about 3 hours per month. And then you'll also have that consultation support to kind of keep you going throughout. So supervision training. Supervision training will require your agency to sign off via an application, which we think is important because it shows that your agency is making this commitment to supervision best practices in psychiatric rehabilitation. So I think I mentioned this earlier, but supervisors here, the expectation is that supervisors will take the practitioner training and then move into an additional 45 hours of training, which will be provided directly to you by Boston University staff through regional web-based supervision. This additional training, the supervision training, will require you as a supervisor to be engaged in all 3 years of the academy, because we know that you all, again, you all as supervisors have full-time jobs too. And we want to spread this out enough so that you can get your tasks done as a supervisor, but also practice some of the supervision skills you'll be learning or honing. One other note before we go into, we have a short video from Dr. Farkas, but one other note about supervision training is that you don't have to be a supervisor to take part in the supervision training. You know, I used to supervise IPRT and then pros. And I know when we have staff that we sort of see something in and we want to groom them a little to bump them up a little bit and sort of advance their career. This will be an incredible opportunity for someone on your staff if you have that ability to send them to the supervision training, and we can help support that. So think about that as well. I am actually going to try to, let's see, share my screen again and move into the video. Hopefully you will hear it, although I think I need to optimize my sound. Give me one quick second. Okay, now we should be good to go.
Hello, my name is Marianne Farkas, and I'm the Director of Training, Dissemination, and Technical Assistance at the Center for Psychiatric Rehabilitation at Boston University. We are one of the partners with NIAPRS in developing the New York Psychiatric.
Sorry about that, folks. Hold on.
Psychiatric Rehabilitation Training Academy. And our role in this project for today is to deliver the supervisory training component. As you will have heard, the main goal of this entire project is to sustain psychiatric rehabilitation as part of the daily practice within your agency. In order to do that, we need expert supervisors who are on the ground day by day, working at elbow with the frontline practitioners to help them deepen their understanding of psychiatric rehabilitation and learn how to do it with a variety of clients in a variety of circumstances. In order to be able to provide that kind of tailored expert level feedback, supervisors themselves need to have expertise. Within this project, there are 2 phases for the supervisors to achieve that level of expertise that will produce the sustainability that we're all working towards. The first is to participate with practitioners in the practitioner level training program that you will hear about or will have already heard about today. I won't go into the details of that. In order to be able to then move to the next level of training, it would be helpful for you to work with 1 or 2 clients within your agency using the psychiatric rehabilitation techniques that you will have learned in the basic training in order to develop the kind of skills that you yourself will need to be shaping when you become a supervisor of psychiatric rehabilitation. So let me repeat that. We highly recommend that you work with 1 or 2 clients in your agency as you're learning the psychiatric rehabilitation process in order for you to develop those basic skills yourself. In the second phase, we will come together with webinars and Zoom contacts to talk through the elements necessary in learning how to assess the performance of your staff relative to their delivery of psychiatric rehabilitation, and then to provide tailored feedback about the various techniques involved in the process so that they can achieve fidelity. In order to do this, at an expertise level, we will ask you to actually take on somewhere around 4 to 6 staff, depending on the size of your agency and your particular position, and essentially become their trainer. So you'll take on 4 to 6 staff. You'll run study groups with those staff on a regular basis about their practice of psychiatric rehabilitation. You will record those study groups, upload those recordings to a secure HIPAA-approved site. We will provide you with feedback about the kind of feedback you provided your staff within those study groups, and then meet on webinar or via Zoom rather, to debrief what happened and the feedback that we're providing. So we'll provide you written feedback, and we will get together as a group and discuss the themes in those feedbacks to debrief what happened in each study session. We anticipate that there will be somewhere between 6 to 8 of these webinar meetings in which we will debrief your study sessions with your staff. Following this, we will create a community of practice among the supervisors so that as you continue to work with your staff, you have a place to discuss the kind of issues that come up and how you handled them, and get feedback from your peers about and suggestions about things that they've tried and done to give you ongoing support. Again, as we said, with the aim of sustainability. So in a nutshell, that's the supervisory component of this project. First, being involved in the basic practitioner level training. And then second, taking on between 4 to 6 staff within your organization, depending on how many people you have, et cetera, and running a study group with those staff as they work through each of the elements of psychiatric rehabilitation, and you provide feedback to them. Those study sessions are recorded, uploaded, we give you feedback on your feedback, and then we get together in 6 to 8 meetings to discuss the group's general feedback for the particular segment that we're working on. Lastly, there'll be a community of practice to provide you with ongoing support. This entire process, as I said, will take somewhere between 1 year to 1.5 years, simply because it takes time to work through the process if you're working actually with clients, and you have to give yourself time in between to do your daily duties, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not that the training itself requires 1 year of your time, it's that it gets delivered over time as clients work through the process, as your practitioners deliver the process, as you run the study groups, et cetera, et cetera. So generally speaking, we're talking about 1 year to 1.5 years time frame. Okay, I hope that I've given you a basic image of what the supervisory training looks like. We're very excited to begin working with you, and I look forward to meeting you all in person on Zoom. Goodbye.
Okay. There we go. Okay. So this is the part of the in-person kickoffs where everybody's hands went wildly up in the air, and I see that the chat box is beginning to jump into action again. So just to kind of summarize what Marianne just said, supervisors will take part in the practitioner training as well. And we ask that you as a supervisor work with a couple of participants or facilitate a group, because we think it's really important, if you're going to supervise practitioners, that you're also part of the process, right? You're learning the same things, you're practicing the same things as the people that you're supervising. Then you're going to, because you're their supervisor, right? You're going to supervise a number of staff who take part in the training, right? So if you have a staff of 10 and 5 of your staff are participating in the training, then that's who you'll quote unquote practice the supervision with. That's what Marianne's talking about. You're going to record, you're going to take out your phone, you're going to press record, and you're going to do your supervision meeting just like you would any other supervision meeting. The only difference is now you're going to press record and you're going to send that recording to Boston to their staff so that they can listen to your supervision and create this sort of feedback loop, right? So you'll be getting feedback on your supervision. You'll take that feedback and then you'll give your practitioners, the practitioners that you supervise rather, some feedback as well. And that will take place over a span of about 8 to 10 months. And you'll be participating in these virtual groups as well, where there'll be general themes around the supervision that you'll have conversation with amongst your other supervisor friends in your region. So not as scary as it may have sounded. When I asked folks in different regions if they thought this was doable, the answer was a resounding yes. So I hope you're all on the same, you also agree. Okay, so training participation expectations. Just to go back to that slide we had at the beginning, you know, we understand that times may be difficult in some regions for some agencies, and folks have different capacities to participate. Some will be able to participate in all phases of the academy, which we hope is the, you know, which we hope is the goal, but we understand that that may change. And where you're at now, your capacity today may be very different than what your capacity is maybe 6 months down the line. And that's okay. So just again, to plant the seed, kind of to think about what your capacity is. Is it knowledge dissemination? Is it skill acquisition? Is it skill development? Or is it that full integration at the agency? And again, you certainly don't need to decide today. So since we brought up agency integration, I think this is a good place to kind of talk a little bit about what we can offer you. So think about alignment, practicality, and relative importance. Those are kind of the overarching themes around rehab integration. So we have, as you see on this slide, the unique ability to work with individual agencies. And we use those subject matter experts, our advisors, AKA subject matter experts, to support you to fully integrate and embed the practices and principles of psych rehab at the agency level. So what does all that mean? It means doing some of the activities or all of the activities on your screen, and it will really depend on your own agency. So things like looking at your policies and practices, making decisions about change, and then doing some of those implementation plans and making change management activities happen. A lot of quality improvement stuff that I'm sure you're already doing, but it'll be more focused on psychiatric rehabilitation. And maybe doing some targeted training and technical assistance. Maybe you'll have a conversation with Lenora Reed-Rose or Marie Gillum from CCSI. Maybe we'll ask Edie to come in or Mike Stoltz to come in and talk to your agency CEO or COO about how they can better support integration. And certainly we hope that if you are interested in integration at this level, that we would have you participate in leadership communities of practice, which again, those communities of practice are an opportunity for folks to kind of get together with other people from other agencies in your region and talk about, you know, talk through similar themes. So in the leadership community of practice, you would talk about integration and talk about the barriers and challenges to integration and how you can work together to kind of overcome those. So I just want to actually go back one more moment there. So when we talk about alignment, practicality, and relative importance, we're actually talking about, we've put a decision guide together. It's an organizational decision guide. And this tool is something that we've put together to help support this decision-making around integration. And we look at several domains, which are up on your screen. Things like workforce development, program performance monitoring evaluation, utilizing community resources and developing partners with people and agencies and organizations in the community. How do we engage people and empower people to make decisions about their own care and treatment? And so this ODG, this organizational decision guide, will look at all of these domains. You'll look at them together actually, you'll not look at them together as a group. Your group will each do their own ODG. So this is an online tool that we've developed. You'll all complete the tool with our guidance. And then we'll talk through the results, the quote unquote results, right? And then we'll pick what's most important, what's of relative importance, what's the most practical, what can we actually start to address today, and we'll work with you on a plan to talk through some of this stuff and make some change. So what do we mean by workforce development? What could be included under that domain? Things like, what are your hiring practices, right? How do you hire staff? How do you retain staff? How do you supervise staff in a way that aligns with psychiatric rehabilitation? Assessment and service planning. And certainly we use different terms in different programs or service models for service planning, but how do we work with people to assess together what their needs and wants are, and how do we develop a personally meaningful goal? Does the practitioner, if I'm a practitioner working in a PROS program, do I tell someone coming in, well, you know, I see you have a long history of psychiatric hospitalization. You don't really take your medication the way you're prescribed, it says here. I think maybe your goal should be to work on stability. That's not psychiatric rehabilitation, right? Psychiatric rehabilitation is empowering someone who is the expert in their own health and well-being to develop something that's meaningful to them, a goal that's meaningful to them, and finding out what that is, working together to find out what that is, and then make a plan to get to that place. Engaging and involving and empowering participants. Again, there's sort of a non-hierarchical relationship in psychiatric rehabilitation practices, and we want to make sure that this is being followed, right? Community resource partnership and development, a huge piece of psychiatric rehabilitation, and certainly something that we know is not the most easy thing to do sometimes, right? There's stigma, there's the not in my backyard. How do we work with people and partners in our communities to develop these relationships and develop community resources for people and with people? So things like that are some of the things we'll be exploring with you in the ODG. We certainly think this is really important, and then we'll help you to sort of identify which are the most important things to you at this time so that we can support you to improve some of them. Okay, so what if? So we put this slide together to try to ameliorate some of the questions that we think might come up. Things like, what if I miss a training? What if I want to learn more? What if I need clarification, or I feel like I'm falling behind? What if I change jobs, right? Who do I go to if I have more questions? What if I change jobs, not only at my agency, but what if I leave and go to another agency and start a different role there? So the short answer is we will support you throughout this entire process to get you through the academy, right? I think our goal here at NIAPRS and all our training partners, and the goal for the Office of Mental Health, is not only to support those people that are participating in services, but also to rebuild that workforce, right? I think Len and Katie talked a little bit about that at the beginning, right? One of our goals is also to sort of reinvigorate and reinfuse the workforce with psychiatric rehabilitation. So we want to support you to get to that place of finishing. So if you miss a training, you know what? That's okay. Things happen, right? Our schedules don't always align with when training offerings are happening. So all of our webinars are live trainings, live webinars. But they are going to be recorded and they'll be posted on our website. You'll also have access to the PowerPoints for each webinar. In addition to that, we're developing a training guide. So you won't have to wait until you get through 18 months of the academy before you can use practical tools that we're going to give you. You don't have to do that. Each webinar, you'll hear something, you'll learn something, and you'll be able to apply it right away. Same thing goes for the learning modules, right? Those learning modules are going to live on the APS and the CPI learning management systems. You'll go through them at your own pace, doing one a month. Except there's 1 month where you have to do 2, so it's technically not 1 a month. But those are shorter, and that's why we've put them together. If you want to learn more about a topic, if you need clarification, we have those office hours that we talked about, those virtual office hours. In addition to that, remember, we have that group of subject matter experts. All you have to do is raise your hand, call your consultant. You'll all have a consultation team and say, you know, Amanda, Marlo, Natalie, John, whoever your consultation team member is, and say, I feel like I'm falling behind. I really don't understand this concept. I've tried it. It doesn't seem to be working for me. What can you do to get me through this? And we'll connect you with a subject matter expert, whether that's a quick phone call or an email or a Zoom training. We'll figure out what your needs are and we'll get your needs met. If you change jobs, again, well, no one's going to change jobs, right? Everyone's going to stay at their agencies. They may get promoted, but they'll stay at their agencies. But if you do change jobs, we will support you to continue through the academy. And we would hope that your new provider agency would also support that as well. So there's plenty of opportunity here. And the short answer is we're going to do whatever we can to support you through that process, whether it's with your consultation team or with a subject matter expert. We've kind of got you covered. So just a quick note about stakeholder feedback, that we think this is really important and we wanted to share with you. We are putting together a stakeholder feedback group that will meet quarterly. The purpose of this is to sort of help build those positive relationships and support the initiative so that we can get feedback in real time from people who have a vested interest in the academy. Get information, make sure that we're inclusive of all the groups that we need to be inclusive of, to sort of support the sustainability and then shape future offerings, right? We hope that we're not going to go away after 3 years and that we'll be able to continue to support the behavioral health workforce. And we'll be able to sort of change what we offer based off of your feedback. So stakeholders will include a number of people, including you, the providers who participate in this academy. OMH, our managed care companies, the people that participate in services, the people that we support certainly have a voice here, our training partners and our subject matter experts. So we plan on meeting quarterly. We'll be sharing some evaluation feedback as well, and hopefully getting feedback from all of you. I've actually already begun receiving emails from people who have been interested in participating since we've done the kickoffs in the last couple of weeks. But if you are interested, and we hope that you are, we would ask that you please send an email to us at information@psychrehabacademy.org. So that is actually you can click from the website itself and to send a question, and that's where it goes to. And just let us know that you want to be part of our stakeholder feedback group. Make sure you leave us your name, your email address, your affiliation, so that we know which group of stakeholders you fall into. So program evaluation and tracking. I alluded to the importance of this in the previous slide, but I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this. So we do want to measure what we're doing, right? We think it's really important, and CCSI is our partner who's supporting our work doing this, as well as McSilver. And as we said in our kickoff meetings earlier in the week or last week, if you registered for this, thank you. You've already started to take part in evaluation and tracking of our program. Because one of the things that you're going to be doing is registering for things. And that's how we keep track of who's doing what. And we do that for a number of reasons. One is because we have to report what we're doing to our funders at the Office of Mental Health, but we also want to share those reports with our stakeholder feedback groups and our trainers and our partners. In addition, we have quarterly reports that we have to share, right? So we know, again, that you're all very busy, and we do not want to burden you with too much or asking too much information, but we are going to be collecting things like information on training and consultation and technical assistance, your attendance and participation. For example, how many people registered for a training event versus how many people attended the training event, your satisfaction. We'll be doing small evaluations that we need to do for continuing education credits. And so we need to track continuing education credits as well as our certification and scholarships. Another reason we need you to participate in the registration process is so that we can keep track of the number of hours that you put into the training academy, right? so that we can provide you with those scholarships for CPRP. And of course, we want to track outcomes. I saved the best for last. We want to track outcomes for the people that we support through our rehab services. And so how are we going to do that? It's not a big ask. At least we think it's not a big ask. We're going to be asking you to do things like pull information from your electronic health records, things on, how many people were admitted or discharged during a period of time, how many folks attained their goal or were discharged because they attained their goal. We're going to ask you to look at hospitalization information, things that you already get from the people that you support and from the staff. And quite honestly, most of this stuff will fall on the consultation team, not you, the provider or the supervisor. One thing that we will be asking is after each phase of training, after that knowledge dissemination phase and skill development and skill acquisition phase, we're going to ask about staff satisfaction. Psychiatric rehabilitation is an evidence-based practice. There's a lot of information out there around outcomes for people who participate in services and the people we support. Not a whole lot out there on sort of the effects of psychiatric rehabilitation on staff and on agencies. And we're really interested to see if there may be some correlation. There's a lot of sort of anecdotal data out there. And we're hoping to try and build up the field and get some information that we can, and get some data around staff satisfaction, staff retention, and that kind of thing. Because we think, especially we've heard this from people, we know, but we want the data to support what we know and what we've heard. We've heard that when staff is happier and more satisfied on the job, that they tend to stay longer. That when your agency infuses psych rehab throughout their agency and not just in a group of services or one program, that people want to come and work for you, that people want to come to your board and join your board, that people in the community want to have partnerships with you, that you have a good reputation, so to say. So those are some of the things that we are hoping to gather information on to support some of our work as well. Okay, so it's time to talk about your consultation teams. So all of these folks are hanging out in the background with us. So big shout out to them. In New York City and Long Island, we have two of our partners that are joining forces to support you, the providers in New York City and Long Island. And that's the folks from the Coalition for Behavioral Health and then the Association of Substance Use Providers in New York State, or ASAP. And I'm going to apologize because I heard that the coalition had a new staff person start either yesterday or today, and their name is not on this slide. So if Marlo, Natalie, or Stephanie, if you're in the background listening and you want to type that person's name in, please do. But these are the folks that are going to be working with you, as well as John and Ashley from ASAP. And we thought it was really important to have both sort of traditional mental health and substance use provider organizations doing the consultation together, because we know that people are whole people and we want to integrate what we're providing to you to best support the people you support through your services. So whether that's folks maybe, who are coming for core services, who maybe have a history of substance use, or maybe you need a little help or support with harm reduction while you're providing core services, then John and Ashley will jump in. As opposed to the folks at the coalition and vice versa. And we're going to do the same thing on the upstate or rest of state regions of Hudson River Central and Western. We have Amanda Piro from NIAPERS, and we're actually in the process of hiring another individual to support our work upstate, as well as we have Dr. Angelia Smith-Wilson from Friends of Recovery in New York State, who will be doing the same exact thing that the coalition and ASAP are doing. They'll just do that in the Hudson River Central and Western regions. So their role really, as your consultation team, is sort of to figure out what your needs are with you, support the implementation of what you've learned, and then help you to overcome any challenges or barriers, and really support your engagement throughout this process, whether you're with us for 18 months as a practitioner or up to 3 years as a supervisor. And if you haven't heard from them already, guarantee that they're going to start reaching out, because we do want them to touch base with you, and we want them to have a touch with you actually just about once a month. And so they'll be doing that either virtually or in person, and they'll work with you to figure out, how to best support you. But you will be seeing them and hearing from them quite often. And again, remember, they're going to be asking you for some information. Okay, so scholarships and continuing ed credits. We're getting towards the end here, and I want to make sure that we leave plenty of time for questions, because I know that the chat is just jumping. So scholarships and continuing ed credits. As I stated earlier, we're working with the Psychiatric Rehabilitation Association, which is the national accreditation body for the CPRP, or the Certified Psychiatric Rehabilitation Practitioner Credential. So the CPRP is not really as well known in New York State as it is across the country, but it is quite well known. As a matter of fact, like I could tell you, Pennsylvania, California, those are big sort of CPRP states. So this is a national credential saying that you understand and practice the principles of psychiatric rehabilitation. There's a whole code of ethics around CPRP, similar to social work or other professional practices. And we anticipate that you will pass that exam and be able to sit for that exam after 45 hours of training that we'll offer you through at least the practitioner training. So when you complete those 45 hours of training, and again, this is another reason why it's important for you to register for everything so we can track your hours. You're going to go on our website and complete a very short application for a scholarship. Now, don't fret. We have a very large number of scholarships available for people. So we should not run out of scholarships. That was one question that came up as we did our tour of the state talking about the academy. So that should not be a concern for you. You'll go on our website, you'll complete a short scholarship application. It's basically gathering more data, right? Who you are, where you work, what your contact information is. We want to know what services you provide so we can tell the Office of Mental Health, this is who we're providing CPRP scholarships for. We want to make sure that we're being inclusive, right? Are we doing something that we're getting sort of all the providers that we can, or maybe are we only getting a certain number of providers? Maybe our pros providers are getting the CPRP, but not the core HCBS providers. We don't want that. We want everybody to get to CPRP. So that's another reason why we're asking, who are you? What services do you provide? Remember, going back to that being inclusive piece. So what does the scholarship give you? So once you send in that application, that'll send us a tickler saying, Daniela has completed this application. We'll go back into our records. We'll make sure you have the right number of hours. We'll go ahead and say, PRA, Daniela's ready to go. Please send her the information she needs. And then you'll get the information from PRA. We'll pay for the cost of your exam. And we'll also give you a prep course as well as a practice exam to help you get ready for that exam and pass. Our goal is to get everyone to pass. The test is an online exam now. Since COVID, you no longer have to go to a testing site. It is online. And should you require any accommodations for your exam, we're happy to provide those for you. For example, if you need a reader, the test will read aloud to you. If you need extra time, we're able to get some accommodations for that as well, as this is a timed exam. The CPRP, just like any other credential or professional or license, although this is not a license, but just like those, it does require a number of continuing education hours and sort of recertification. So we'll provide you with all that information as well. Continuing ed credits. Again, like I said earlier, we want to get you as many CEs as we possibly can through the academy. CEs are going to be provided at no cost. And just so you know, this whole training is at no cost. So please take advantage of it. If you have students or social work interns working with you for a year or 6 months, put them in the academy. Let them get at least the knowledge that you're being given. Maybe if they can't go through the whole thing, maybe they can't, or maybe they can. I don't know. I guess it depends on your agency, but what a wonderful gift to give an intern. So continuing ed credits are for social workers, LM and LCSWs, CPRPs, LMHCs, and certified peer specialists. We are working behind the scenes on getting training approval for SERPAs and other peer recovery professionals, LCATs, CASACs, and we just added MFTs in there, so I need to update this slide. But to get those CEs, you will have to complete an evaluation, just like you would, at any of our other trainings that NIAPRS offers. There'll be a short evaluation. You'll complete that. You'll let us know which continuing ed credit you're looking for, and then we'll send those to you. So a little bit about integration and sustainability. I want you to think, and hopefully you have been thinking about, how do you continue to practice psychiatric rehabilitation in our workplace after we go away, right? So we're here to support you throughout this process, but what happens when we leave? So we've put a couple of sort of safeguards in place that we think will work. We have webinars, we have modules, we have our training guide, right? All of those things will sort of be here. They'll be recorded, they'll be on the website. The website will be your hub for our trainings. In addition to that, we think it's really important, and this is why we put a separate bullet point for this, is the role of leadership and supervisors, right? We need to rebuild a workforce of supervisors that can support this. We need leadership to support what's happening at the program level and at the service level. We had breakout groups when we did this throughout the state, kind of talking about implementation so that we could address some challenges that people thought of around implementation. And the one thing we heard in several regions, loud and clear, was that staff felt that they didn't have the support of their agency leadership. And they said, this is going to be a barrier because I want to do this, but I feel like I'm not supported by leadership. I feel like they're not giving me the time. So my response was, that's where our work comes in, right? And where our subject matter experts come into play. Because we know that if leadership doesn't support change, change can't happen. And supervision and supervisors have to support that change as well to continue this practice. So we're aware of that, and we will work with you on that. So again, sort of putting all the puzzle pieces together, we want to build this sustainable workforce of psychiatric rehabilitation practitioners. But really, we know that you have skills and best practices. You've been trained. And what our hope is that we can integrate all of that to promote the best possible outcomes for the people that we support in our services. So what is coming next? I know you were asking this question. It was all on your minds, so I thought I'd answer it for you. So what's coming next is we start our training next month, February 8th, from 2 to 3:30 p.m. We have our first webinar with Dr. Marianne Farkas, using psychiatric rehabilitation to support people to develop skills and resources to reach their goals. And I realized there's a typo that I didn't fix. Following that webinar, that knowledge dissemination webinar, it's going to be a big webinar, right? There's going to be a lot of people on that webinar, but that's okay. You'll hear the background, you'll hear the sort of foundations of psych rehab and how that sort of fits into the bigger picture of behavioral health services in New York. And then you'll have an audio interview with someone who's skilled in principles and practices of psych rehab, and that'll be your first podcast. It'll be about 20 minutes or so. It's in the editing phase right now, actually. And then on Wednesday, February 15th, you'll have an office hour with Dr. Farkas, and that's an hour from 1 to 2 p.m. The office hour and the webinar are live, but they will be recorded, and the PowerPoint from the webinar will be posted on our website along with the recording. You'll visit our website to register for all of the webinars, office hours, and really all of the trainings for our academy. So please, if you haven't already become familiar with that website, please become familiar with it. Okay, so I'm going to actually take a moment. I think Len is going to jump in and start going through some questions because we've left quite a bit of time for questions, and we did that on purpose. So I know there's a ton of them, Len.
Yes, I do want to say though, before we get into questions, and this is something you've done at the other kickoffs, is remind people that may have registered, a bunch of people, that they need to get you their emails so that they're getting the latest information.
So Len, I have very good news for you. We are missing 8 emails from all of those hundreds of people that have
Nice.
registered for the Academy.
That's wonderful.
It is. We've been
Okay.
working really hard to get all that information from you guys. But I will say, actually, since you brought it up, Len, you brought it up at a good point, because we have, we've created this mailing list through our constant contact. So we've been sending things out. We actually sent out a reminder yesterday. If you did not receive the reminder, it's likely because we're in your spam or junk mailbox, and you need to put us in your safe senders list. So if you didn't get that email yesterday, please do check your spam or your junk folders, because it does come from constant contact. So it might look like it's spammy, but it's really not. And we'll keep in touch with you through that list, so that you're apprised of all of the, registration and when events are happening. We'll keep you in the loop and remind you about those things.
Great. So, yeah, there were a lot of questions, a lot of repeats.
Okay.
One question seemed to be coming up and again, and that's probably because I guess we have a number of people from out of state, because one of the biggest questions are people out of state able to go through the New York Training Academy?
Good question. And I know people have been reaching out about that to me independently of this as well. So the short answer is no. Right now, our funding will only allow us to provide training and technical assistance to rehabilitation providers in New York State. So that's for now, it's our PROS, CORE, and HCBS and CCBHC PRS staff. There may be an opportunity for some of our other New York provider staff to join in the second cohort. We have to see sort of what those numbers look like. But if you're out of state, I'm sorry, we can't have you participate at this time. If you are in state and you are not a rehab provider, I know I've been getting questions from clinics now that clinic has been moving into the rehab option. So I'm sorry, Len, if that was one of your questions, I'm taking it. But we're not able to offer those folks training right now for the first cohort. We're going to look at what happens in the second cohort and make sure that there's some space. I do think that, and I would agree, I think I can speak for our colleagues at OMH, that we think there's value certainly to other providers being trained in psych rehab, certainly because of, communication and collaboration and things of that nature. But for right now, we just don't have the capacity right now. But it's something we're looking at for the second cohort.
Another topic of questions were related to CEUs, in particular, employment specialists and CRCs.
So I can tell you that we are not doing CRCs. We can probably look and see if there are a number of people for CRCs. We actually don't offer them through NIAPRS anymore, but we can see if we can do it through one of our partners. And then, do you mean for the WIPA for the employment specialists, which
wasn't specified? I'm sure it wasn't the WIPA.
Yeah, we're not able to do those yet right now either. But again, that's something we can look at. I'm going to make a note about that actually.
Another question was, is it mandatory for supervisors to take 1 to 2 clients?
Oh, that's a really great question. And it's something that came up across the state. So, I said this a bunch of times. Our goal really is to get people through the training, right? And we know, I actually had a provider call me the other day and was like, listen, Daniela, I'm going to level with you. They're like, we're a core provider. I'm a core supervisor. All of our staff are paid, they're per diem staff basically, right? They're paid by the number of services that they provide. And I'm not willing to take those hours away from the staff I supervise. I'm okay with that, right? I understand that. So as a supervisor, if you're not able to take on a participant or two or a group or two to facilitate, that's okay. I think there's still a lot of value in taking part in the same training. Listening to the webinars, listening to the podcasts, attending the office hours, doing the learning modules, and even coming to the in-person training so that you're hearing what the staff you're supervising is hearing. you probably just can't make it all the way to the communities of practice. But if that is the circumstance in which you fall under, we want to be flexible and we want to try to make it work. So this is an opportunity, I think, for you to reach out to either myself or to your consultation team, and then we can sort of make some decisions together on a case-by-case basis.
So another topic of questions were related to links for seminars and podcasts, which I know you're going to tell them you need to register at the website. But the other topic was is the website up to date in regard to the dates? And do we have to register for each training? So same question.
Yeah, so definitely you do have to register for each training. Again, that's how we track information and track data, so that we know how many people are coming to each thing. Especially when it comes to our in-person trainings, we really do need you to register way ahead of time so that we know that we have enough space for people, like physical space. Those will be smaller, as I mentioned earlier. We'll sort of stagger those around the state, so that you can stagger the staffing, you know, whether you're pros or core or HCBS or whatever psych rehab provider you work with. But you do need to register. The first phase of training is open and available for registration. I think that might actually be our next slide. Oh, no, it's not. But the first phase, everything's up on the website, all 4 webinars, all 4 office hours already up. So if you haven't already done so, please go ahead and register for those so you can put them in your calendar. For now, we are working with a graphic artist who is updating the website, who will be putting in an annual sort of training calendar so you can see at a glance what's happening in each month, whether it's a learning module or an in-person training. And we're really close to having that completed. And then as soon as that's done, that'll be posted on the website as well.
There was one question that I did not catch. I hope we caught it, which was something about the website saying there's something listed for 215, but in the slideshow, we've got it under 216. So hopefully that question will get posted. How can we sign up additional staff?
Good question. So there is certainly an opportunity to do that now. We haven't quite started yet. If you are interested, you can, I'm going to switch the slides, but you can email me directly, or you can ask to add staff at the information at. It's probably easier just to email me directly. We're keeping track. Amanda and I are keeping close eye on the registration. And if you do have anybody that you need to adjust registration for or enrollment for, whether it's to remove someone or hopefully add someone and not remove someone, there's still time to do that. So we're able to continue to do that. And then if this is not the right time, so to say, about adding people in, there's that second cohort, don't forget about. So that second cohort of trainees will begin February of 24 next year.
What happens if somebody changes a job in the 3-year period?
So if you change a job, we would hope that your new employer would continue to support your decision to finish the training academy. I think that, I mean, I'm happy to get involved. I think our consultation team can get a little bit involved. Katie, can I pull you into this one and say we may even have maybe somebody from the field office or someone get involved if we need to?
I'm so sorry I missed the question. What
It's
do we
okay.
need to pull the field office in
The
for?
question was around if somebody changes jobs, moves agencies, like how do they continue to participate? So my answer was I hope that the new agency or the new placement would support that. But if we needed to, I think we could ask OMH to help us support that person, right?
Oh, absolutely. We would have no concern with them continuing. I would say if they were hired into a program that isn't eligible, like if they went from pros to a clinic, it might be worth considering whether or not it still makes sense for them to participate, whether these are skills that they would continue to use in their new job. But for the most part, I think this is something we would support, and we would hope that the new employer would support it as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Can a person working in a shelter staff setting get this training?
So again, I think I'd mentioned this earlier. We do think that there's certainly value in having the non-rehab staff attend the training. And quite honestly, there's nothing holding you back from attending a webinar and getting some of that knowledge, right? But at this time, we just don't have the capacity to train everyone. Hopefully that'll change. We'll see. And then we'll see, especially if you're a multi-service agency. I said this a couple of times in the in-person kickoffs, we want the CPRP to kind of be a career ladder tool for some folks, right? So if you're especially a multi-service agency, you're running a shelter or residential programs, and you want to kind of try to filter some staff and move some staff into other positions at your agency, it certainly doesn't hurt for them to be involved in learning modules and maybe the webinars and the learning modules. And then maybe in that second cohort, if there is space, we can get you in for the rest of the, for the in-person trainings as well. It's something we'll have to kind of keep an eye on.
So last question here that we have is, my agency is not only OMH, but Oasis. Are you collaborating with them as well?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think, because we are working with so many core NHCBS providers, there are certainly some OASIS designated folks taking part in our training. As you noticed or you may have noticed from the consultation teams, we do have substance use professional provider staff that are going to be involved in our consultation teams. So we think it's really important to look at that whole person and sort of see, is this someone that needs more support from mental health or from the substance use side of things? And we're hoping to work together to kind of support our practitioners to best support the people that they provide services to and with. So the short answer is yes.
That wraps up all the questions.
Wow, you guys must have all had a lot of the same questions, because there were a ton of things.
There were a lot of similar questions.
I spoke really fast so that we could get to questions. All right, so I think I just want to double check the Q&A and make sure we didn't miss anyone in there. Looks like there is a question about the podcasts. Do you get to the podcast by signing into the webinar? Yeah, so the answer is yes. Everything that we're doing, the training guide, the webinars, the podcasts, the office hours, the PowerPoints from all our presentations, everything's going to be posted on our website. And then you may go to another site from our website, but you always start at the website. So for example, if you noticed for registration for today, you'll go to our website, you'll click Kickoff, but then you're taken to the McSilver Institute website, right? Because there are partners supporting our registration on the back end. So same thing for the podcast. You'll go to our website for the recorded webinars. You'll go to our website, you'll click in the training archives. And if it's a webinar, you'll be taken to our YouTube channel. And if it's a podcast, you'll be taken to, I want to say it's SoundCloud. Is that right, Len? SoundCloud? I think so.
Yeah.
Where you'll hear our podcasts. Okay. So we do have a few more minutes. If you want to chat in the chat box, we're happy to hang around.
If you do find yourself having more questions, feel free to reach out to Daniela at the email, at both emails. She's really good at checking her emails. So
I really do try to get back to people in at least a couple of days. Usually I try for the same day, but it doesn't always happen.
There are a lot of questions about your picture in the back, your dog. Oh. So, I mean, we're getting real serious here.
She's been quiet. She hasn't barked once. She knew I was recording today. Yeah. All right, folks. Well, I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for joining us. I really do look forward to this journey over the next at least 18 months with each of you. If you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.